Well, Zweli Mkhize has resigned as the health minister. He tendered his notice just hours before the president announced a cabinet reshuffle. He was on special leave following revelations of a dodgy contract awarded to communications company Digital Vibes. Let's get some reaction then to this from Bheki Mngomezulu from the University of the Western Cape's Political Science Department. Professor Mngomezulu, thank you for your time this morning. In broad brush strokes, your take on the cabinet reshuffle, the first cabinet reshuffle by President Cyril Ramaphosa since he came into office in 2018. Was it a hit or a miss?
No, thank you very much for having me. From where I'm standing, it was a miss for a number of reasons. The fact that the president has taken so long to do a cabinet reshuffle means that he had ample time to think about the people he would be bringing on board and those he was going to relieve of their duties. And having had all the time, what we saw happening was that a number of ministers were in fact recycled from one ministry to the other, when the majority of the people would have expected that those who didn't perform in the president's own assessment would have been shown the door, as it were, so that they could go back to be members of parliament and then get new blood to be able to execute the mandate that he had given them. But we didn't see that happening. Of course, there are reasons for that, but from where I'm standing, I think that it was a miss.
So there are, I think in summary, about 3 areas that are affected by these changes. It's in the area of health, around the issue of the country's finances, and also in the security cluster. Where exactly does your disappointment emanate from within that categorization? Where could he have gone further in bringing in the changes?
Maybe to start with, there are 4 ministries where you don't play games when you make changes. The first one is the finance ministry. The second one is the health. The other one is a DECO. The other one is a state security. You don't just chop and change in those ministries, and you also don't just bring in people just to fill the gaps or to fill the spaces. So in this cabinet reshuffle, one thing that came as a shock to most of us was when the president took a decision to take a state security and place it under the presidency. The question people are asking, myself included, is what purpose will that serve? If, for example, the then deputy minister in state security has been retained as a deputy minister in the presidency, focusing primarily on state security. So what change are you bringing in? That is the question. Then in the area of finance, under normal circumstances, obviously then we'd want to see continuity, which is correct. But then the question is, where does the deputy minister, the minister now come, who has come in, where does he come from? What does the history tell us about him? And has he performed to the satisfaction of the president in the past? If the answer is in the negative, then the next question will be, what are you hoping to achieve this time around? Then the general concern that I'm having is that we don't see the youth coming in. Then the question will be, what is the future of the party? Forget about the country. What is the future of the party if youngsters are not brought in to take leadership position? So those are some of the concerns that some of us are having in as far as the cabinet reshuffle is concerned.
What will you say to those who say, when you're saying that ringing in the changes, perhaps this is a missed opportunity. What will you say to those that will say the political realities also dictated that he needed to pay attention to those? The argument that this is not like Joe Biden in the United States, where everyone who's serving in the administration know very well that they serve at the behest and at the pleasure of the president, who is popularly elected with 80 million votes, people that voted for him, as opposed to a situation in South Africa where your political capital and your survival in the political party, especially in the context that we have now in the National Executive Committee, that simply firing all these ministers and bringing in new people was just not going to work politically for Cyril Ramaphosa.
You know what, Thulasizwe, there is something we have to be frank about. If you are a leader, you must be a leader by all definition. And it means that you have to take decisions even if those decisions are not popular. And you have to take decisions even if you know that those decisions are most likely going to cost you your job. Because you want to leave a legacy and want people to remember you for the good that you did, not for yourself, not for the party, but for the country. What I mean by that is that I'm well aware that the president was pressed between the rock and the hard place. On the one hand, he wanted to make sure that the people he works with are people he can count on. But then on the other hand, he had to manage the situation, he had to manage the factions within the organization, he had to take care of the tripartite alliance, he had to take care of the people who brought him into power. Remember that the president ascended into this position by a mere 179 votes, which means then that he's sitting in an uncomfortable position, which then talks to your point that he can't do as he wants to do. But of course, I'm saying that if you are a leader, take firm positions as long as you are convinced that you are doing the right thing for the country. If you lose your position, so be it. At least history will judge you in the correct light because you will have done something good for the country. That is what I think the president should have done.
Lastly, Prof, may I ask you to then weigh in on this move to take political oversight over intelligence to the presidency? It's not a new move, of course, because the first cabinet of Nelson Mandela did not have a minister of intelligence. You had a deputy minister who was responsible for intelligence, who was placed at the Department of Justice. And only in 1999 did you have Joan Tlantla actually appointed to become the Minister of Intelligence. But then there was a move and a shift away from that to ensure that we now have a minister to be responsible for intelligence. What do you make of President Ramaphosa taking that position and basically collapsing it to the presidency as allowed by the Constitution, by the way? But is it your reading that this will help him to give better direction and take charge of the country's national security, as he's arguing, or should we be concerned that too much power is concentrated in the president, hoping that this will be someone who will always act in the best interest of the country, but no guarantees there that that will be the case all the time?
No, I like your line of thought because that is exactly where I also come in. My view is that bringing the Ministry of State Security in the presidency, in my view, will not serve a good purpose for a number of reasons. One, there have been concerns that the former president Jacob Zuma, politicized state security. Correctly or wrongly so, I'm not going to engage into that argument, but there is that perception out there. If that perception is something to go by, the question then becomes, are you not worsening the situation by bringing state security under the presidency? Once the state security is under the presidency, will there be no political interference? So that is the question you need to ask. But the history that we are referring to is relevant here. Nelson Mandela's cabinet was totally different because the context under which he operated was different. Since then, since 1999, as you correctly pointed out, there was a reason to have a separate ministry of state security and to have a minister of state security separate from the presidency. Now, the question is, what has gone wrong, which then necessitated that you bring state security under the presidency, and what implication will that have? So those are the questions that maybe the president might assist us in answering. But from where I'm standing, I don't see it as a way of capacitating state security. I just see it as opening up doors for political interference, which will be a concern to most South Africans, myself included.
I've got to thank you for that, Professor Mngomezulu, there joining us for that conversation and reflecting on the cabinet reshuffle and its implications on the various sectors where you saw changes being rung in by President Cyril Ramaphosa.